Hello and welcome. This is NTA Tuesday Live and I'm Cyril Stober. Now, climate change is an existential threat to humanity. Global warming reaching 1.5 degrees Celsius in the near term would cause unavoidable increases in multiple climate hazards and present multiple risks to ecosystems and humans. However, the temperature rises are already on track to increase by 2.7 degrees Celsius, far ahead of the Paris Agreement of limiting rises to 1.5 degrees Celsius. Nigeria is listed among the top 10 most vulnerable countries to climate change globally. The Nigerian Green Bond Market Development Program strategy presents an approach to accelerate the development of green bonds as a tool for Nigeria to broaden investment in green projects and assets. Some of the program's key features include regulatory support for the development of guidelines and listing requirements for green bonds, developing a pool of local green bonds, licensed verifiers, training, and supporting demonstration transactions. Well, tonight, NTA Tuesday Live will focus on leveraging on green bonds and foreign direct investment. But just before we go into the conversation, let's get to see this report put together by environment correspondent Charles Alpha.
Nigeria's journey into the realm of green finance began in 2017 when the country launched its inaugural sovereign green bond, becoming the first African nation to issue such bonds. The issuance aimed to raise approximately 10 billion naira, that is around $28 million to finance environmentally sustainable projects. Since then, Nigeria has made significant strides in expanding its green bond program, reflecting its dedication to sustainable development and compliance with global environmental goals. This initiative aims to bolster the nation's commitment to both economic growth and environmental sustainability.
For the past few years, Nigeria has made significant strides in green finance, marked by successful issuance of 2 sovereign green bonds. The two issuances, amounting to the total of $165 million, have been instrumental in financing climate-smart projects across various sectors, including renewable energy, afforestation, and sustainable transportation.
Sovereign green bonds are debt security issued by a national government to raise funds specifically for projects that have positive environmental or climate benefits, such as renewable energy projects, funding solar and wind energy projects, to decrease reliance on fossil fuels and diversify the country's energy mix. Other key areas are climate resilience, that is, investing in infrastructure that enhances resilience to climate impact, such as flood control systems and sustainable urban development. Afforestation and reforestation initiatives to increase forest cover to combat deforestation and its associated environmental impacts, as well as waste management. Question is, how can Nigeria support the development of guidelines and enlisting requirements for green bonds, develop a pipeline of green investments and facilitate engagement with potential investors, support broader debt capital market reforms with positive impacts on the non-government bond market in Nigeria?
We have a domestic issuance of US dollar bonds which aim to bring in foreign portfolio investment. Foreign direct investment is also starting to flow in, and there are many more on the sidelines.
Also, to be explored is the corporate green bonds of value amounting to 32.83 billion naira, which have been issued. The impact of Nigeria's sovereign green bonds program goes beyond environmental benefits. It offers significant economic advantages, creates jobs in the green sector, and positions Nigeria as a leader in sustainable financing on the African continent.
Speak to issues that affect green. We speak to issues that affect the climate. we speak to issues that affect sustainability. And of course, that is critical for us to be able to drive our nation.
By leveraging green bonds, Nigeria can catalyze private investments in sustainability, fostering innovation and driving the transition to a greener economy. Charles Alpha.
Now that report sets the tone for tonight's discussion. We'll start off by introducing our guests. Let me welcome to this program Mr. Olaitan Fajuitan. He is SA to the Minister of Environment and Program Coordinator, Sovereign Green Bonds. Thanks for being with us here today.
Good evening.
Thank you. We're also joined today by Professor Ken Ife, Development Economist and President, Institute of Professional Economists and Policy Management. Thanks for being here,
Thank you
Prof.
for having me.
Always good to have you join us. Let me also welcome tonight Honorable Sam Onuibu. He is a former member of the House of Representatives. Currently, he represents the Southeast on the Northeast Development Commission. Thanks for being with us here.
Thank you very much.
Right.
Good evening.
And we're also joined by Dr. Ayo Anthony. He's head prize division of the NBS, and that's the National Bureau of Statistics. Good to have you join us.
Thank you for having me.
Right. Well, of course, the nature of the program, at some point in time, we go interactive when you can join in the conversation. But when it's that time, we'll remind you of the process and the procedures. For now, we'll come back to the issues. And, well, we've heard and seen so much about the negative effects of climate change, and even the last Climate Change Summit looked at opportunities that nations, especially in Africa, can explore. Nigeria's president, of course, described the fight against climate change as not merely an environmental necessity, but a global economic opportunity. And so, in considering that, we talk about the green bond, especially for foreign direct investment. So I think the best place to start is to put that in context and explain the whole concept of the green bond, what we refer to as the sovereign green bond, Nigeria's sovereign green bond. And for that, we turn to Mr. Olaitan Fajuitan.
Thank you very much. Green bonds are essentially financial instruments, ethical financial instruments that are geared towards projects that mitigate the adverse effects of climate change, biodiversity loss, emission reduction, and general environmental stability. So you invest in projects like clean energy to reduce emissions, clean fuels, biofuels. So those are basically the projects that green bonds focus on. So it's a bond like any other bond, but it's specific for addressing our NDCs, that's our national determined contributions, our goals for emission reduction and climate change mitigation. So basically that's what the green bonds are for.
Yeah, but for Nigeria, that is part of the global movement to reducing carbon emissions. We say the first thing we should look at is not just an environmental issue, but also an economic opportunity. So, Prof, could you just, link the two?
Yeah, maybe I can actually bring a socio-economic context to this. Well, we have a situation where we are destroying the planet because we are having so much gas emission, and they are called greenhouse gases. And what it is that you have a preponderance of carbon derivatives, carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, and they are attacking the ozone layer, which means that more of the sun is penetrating and hitting the surface of the earth. So to be able to reduce that incidence, which is what is affecting the temperature rises, because they have more penetration, so it's affecting the temperature rise, and the consequences of that is that many other things are following it. You have all kinds of erosion, and you have turbulence in the sea and then all everything that goes with it. But it's not just the gas alone, but there are other things that are involved, and they have more impact on the environment than just the turbulence. Now, to address this, several meetings were being held, but the Paris Agreement was one where, for the first time, all countries agreed that they are going to pursue a program, and that program is for each country to develop national determined contribution. Nigeria has worked out our own program, our own strategy, our NDC program, where we said, okay, under normal circumstances, over a finite period of time, we can achieve 20% reduction. But if you are going to give us more help and support, we can actually increase it to 47%. That is what our contribution says. But we also know from the calculations that Nigeria would actually need about $177 billion. These are not small monies. The second part of it is that these are environmental, economic, social. If you ask any bank, would you fund? The banks will tell you, yes, they do, but they will never fund anything like that. They don't even fund agriculture, let alone fund environmentally related. So it is not the immediate banks that you will go to look for money to do this. So what you call this is market failure. There's market failure in access to finance, to environment and social related activities, including, of course, agriculture. Now, central bank intervened in agriculture, but central bank will be hard to be persuaded to intervene in strategic, national domestic finance intervention in this area. So we have to resort to sovereign bond. So that is how we started getting federal government involved. You needed to issue sovereign bond because you can't rely on the market to bring the finance required to make any meaningful progress in this area. So having done the first one, which was about 10.2 billion, Nigeria was actually the first in Africa to do this, and about the third in the world. And then we do another one in 2019. And in the intervening period, Nigeria actually became the first to adopt the global standard. So we're making tremendous progress. But at the back of our mind, of our policymakers, we actually needed to diversify our economy. Because since I was born, we've all been hearing about diversification, but it hasn't happened. But this is a great opportunity for us to diversify our economy. And then it is one which is environmentally sustainable, and everybody can participate in this. And it involves energy, it involves food production, it involves so many other aspects of our economy. So it's really a great way to go in terms of diversifying our economy. So where does the economy comes into this? The economy is that if we diversify the economy, we'll make more money, we'll create more employment. I don't think anything can create more employment for us than this area, because everybody can participate in it. Various agricultural activities, processing activities, and all that, all of them can engage all our young people, and it can even include bioeconomy, can include circular economy, can include blue economy. It is vast, and bigger opportunities that it presents, not only for environmental, for social, but also for economic.
Well, thanks. We'll explore in greater detail part of what you've just spoken about, and the question of Nigeria's stance that we can go up to 47% if they bring money. If they bring money, and of course, find out if the greatest polluters would be willing to do that, because that has always been a subject of debate. But Honorable Simon Igwe, let's come to you and hear your opening comments on this.
Well, thank you very much indeed. It's not much now, except to say that we have made a good effort, along this line. Well, being first in starting this as far back as actually we started conversation in 2016, and then moved on until 2017 when it was eventually issued. And certain standards were required, and for us to have been able to satisfy those standards then, which in fact Moody came in assessing or evaluating what we were doing and gave us excellent. Eventually, the bond issuance was successful, and then before we did the second one. But I think it points to the fact that if we listen to what Mr. President said at the Abu Dhabi Sustainability Week Summit about asking foreign investors to take advantage of the third issuance of the bond, then that explains part of that statement that it's not merely environmental issue, but that it's a wonderfully global opportunity for investment. And we stand in a very good position to be able to harness this. Why? Just like Mr. President said in his speech, which was published by CNN late 2023, after we did the Dubai climate change COP, that's COP 28, that we're in a position to be able to benefit because almost everything around here is green. We have not burnt, we don't have the, coal and all the other mines that have to be closed down before we take advantage of what we have. So for us, it's a wonderful opportunity. And I would like to go back to what we say in the Climate Change Act. The objectives and application, in fact, Section 1 of that Act says that the Act is to achieve a low greenhouse gas emission, inclusive green growth, and a sustainable economic development by mainstreaming clear climate change actions into national development priorities. So when you walk from there and look at some of the things that Mr. President and then some other players have said about our efforts to be able to benefit, for instance, from the green bond issue, which is a serious marketing by Mr. President, for him to have said that at that level, asking people to come in and invest. And with the successes that we have recorded, I have no doubt whatsoever that combining all this with some other areas that we have ventured into, like electric vehicles, compressed natural gas, and the rest of them, I think his statement is in order, that it's not merely an environmental issue, but a wonderful global investment opportunity.
Well, Dr. Anthony, for most citizens, the basic issue is relating these concepts, policies to everyday life, which for many would seem as a continuous struggle. This is the direction in which the country is going. It's going to boost its economy through the issuance of the green bonds. But for the citizen, the average citizen, it is relating the outcomes of such policies to everyday cost of living and production that really is the matter here. So how do you relate these two?
Thank you very much. Thank you, the contributors. Now, I will talk on the area of the impact using data to buttress my point as somebody that works in the authority of data in Nigeria. Now, global warming has come to stay. It's a new socioeconomic reality. The impact of it is on the output level in Nigeria, also the price level in Nigeria. When I say output level, look at the flood of 2020 and 2021. It affected the output level in Nigeria, especially agricultural products. And if you study our GDP around that period, it affected the growth rate of the GDP, especially crop production. And people believe that flooding is one of the results of global warming.
Yeah, correct.
Anything that affects agricultural produce in Nigeria definitely will affect prices. Why?
Inflation.
In our CPI computation in Nigeria, food constitutes about 50% of the weight. Anything that happens to the price of food products in Nigeria, definitely it has a greater multiplier effect on the inflation rate in Nigeria. That's one thing I want us to know. Another thing is this: if you want to work against the negative effect of this global warming, some of the things government is trying to do, as we are saying, as Prof said, diversification. Capital is also needed to diversify. You don't diversify when you don't have the base. The base now is the challenge which I want to talk about. How do we get the fund to diversify? I think one of the strategies is to the loan government is talking about. But another thing is this: if we collect this loan, we are meant to invest it in environment-friendly projects like renewable energy. But the problem in Nigeria is this: even if we invest in this renewable energy, what is the income level of Nigerians to afford the products that will come from this production? So it has a lot of issues. It's a system. If you say, okay, let's collect this loan and invest in renewable energy, the product, this panel, this solar energy, the cost implication, how many Nigerians can afford solar power in their private homes today? So as I said, I'm here to talk about the data. I've told you that the flood affected the output level. But now, thank God, the Bureau is embarking upon what we call CPI and GDP rebasing. By the end of this month, we are going to know the new structure of Nigerian economy in terms of industry, in terms of services, in terms of manufacturing. Also, we are going to know the real inflation rate. And when I say inflation rate, caused by also this global warming as well, as a factor that is responsible for persistent increase in price of goods and services.
Just one bit I wonder about, if you can take us through that. Is there any available statistics to show within any specific period? You started off mentioning the floods that have ravaged the country, and these floods have almost been year in, year out, perennially, and of course affecting food production. Would we have the figures to say, for instance, in the flood of 2021, which led to this amount of losses in farm produce, and reflect on what happened in 2012? Do we have the figures to look at and say, is it getting worse or is it getting better?
Thank you. Now, to come up with such a figure, there should be a survey of impact analysis of flood on food production in Nigeria. The Bureau has not carried out such a survey for now. But what we can say is this from secondary analysis, right, before the flood, after the flood. From this analysis, we can tell you the impact of flood on output production in Nigeria. Before the flood, we have a GDP level, and we have the expected. But after the flood, if the expected is not actualized, we can reduce the cost of the deviation to flood. So that's what we call secondary analysis. For the primary analysis, survey should be done, census should be done, but the Bureau has not been empowered to carry out that analysis or survey for now.
All right, let's return to Mr. Fajuito. Well, Nigeria has embraced the global aspiration to reduce carbon emissions. So, although there are those who would argue and that if you look at what Nigeria contributes to global warming in terms of pollution, it's significant. It's next to nothing. Yes. There are countries of the world that are highly industrialized, and we haven't even started. We haven't scratched the surface. So the question would be, we are pushing in, and yes, you say we are first in Africa in adopting some of the strategies. We want to reduce our dependency on fossil fuels. And what are the strategies we're engaging? I want you to look at that on one side. And on the other side, for those who say, yeah, it's all right for the industrialized world to tell us what to do at this time. We have the resources which we have yet to exploit, which they did to get to that level. Okay. And so, how does this play out for the balance of development efforts?
Thank you very much. So, from the first question, we are low emitters, but we emit. So, and since we agreed to the Paris Agreement, we embarked on an energy transition plan. The CNG is our alternate energy before our plan is to hit net zero emissions by 2060. We're going CNG route, which brought about the establishment of the PCNGI, and encouraging conversion of vehicles to CNG, and then we're also adopting electric vehicles. That is also our own contribution to reduction. Right. Now, the second question, the second question was on.
Yes, I wanted you to relate how we are not one of those big
emitters.
But then the industrialized world, they have exploited these resources and have grown.
Yes.
So we, and they say to us, don't do this.
It's a trade-off. If you remember during the campaign, the president said something that you can't keep a hungry rat in the church and say it shouldn't eat the Holy Communion. So we will trade off. You know, what we said is net zero. So we will increase our strategies for emission reduction while exploiting our natural resources. We have to feed our people.
Right.
It's impossible to discard what God has given us in the name of climate action. So we will still exploit our natural resources, but in a responsible manner. So you have, in the oil industry, for instance, they are pushing towards what they call flaring, to stop flaring. So it's a cleaner way to exploit the oil.
But that has always been on the table for long, and over the years we've gone and shifted the goalposts.
Right. It's a lot of investments to totally remove the flaring aspect of oil exploration, but I know there's a plan to totally eliminate it. So yes, like I said, it has to be a trade-off.
Well, again, Prof, perhaps net zero by 2060 is this feasible?
It's a tall order, but it's not on because we're talking about net.
Net, yes.
Because it doesn't mean that you are not going to be doing things, but it's just that the savings are going to overtake the. Now, see, what I like about the whole arrangement is the wealth. Nigeria's wealth is gas, not crude. We have almost, is it 200 trillion cubic feet of gas, which means under normal circumstances that can actually last for 100 to 200 years, whereas the oil crude wouldn't last that much. So to accept our gas as a transition arrangement is fantastic. But what does that mean? We are still emitting gas, but the quantum has reduced significantly. When you burn petrol, is about 6, 7, 8 carbon that you are burning. When you are doing LNG, that is the low pressure gas, you are doing 4. You are burning 4 to 5 carbon. But when you are using methane, which is our compression natural gas, it's only 1 carbon that we are burning. So we are actually giving them a good deal, reducing from about 8, 9 down to 1. But it allows us to use our natural resources. It also makes us to direct investment into the flaring of gas. Not just Nigerian investment, foreign investment, and whatever support you want to give us, you need to sweeten this investment platform for us. So there's a good point for that. This is, now that we are going for dollar-denominated bonds, that's actually saying that here we are. Then let's see your commitment. Bring something on the table. We can do more. It brings something to the table. And the other point, of course, is, in a way, it is prejudicial to our development, in the sense that you're actually telling us we don't actually like the idea that you're going to possibly use coal to generate power. So, so you're actually going to be restraining us from doing more of those, because we know we have coal everywhere.
Exactly.
You're also going to be restraining us from using all other sources that could put pressure on those. In other words, telling us, instead of using some of these equipment, now go and invest in other new technologies.
Right.
So there's a trade-off.
Probably would be coming from them.
Yes.
So,
and they are the higher polluters. So they should put money where their mouth is. That's the point. So we should do more of the foreign denominated bonds. We need to do that, bring their money.
All right.
Bonds.
Well, in addition to the conversation in the studio, we also have a number of reports, and this one is coming in from Port Harcourt.
Nigeria is ranked 7th among the 10 countries with the highest gas flaring, contributing 75% of the world's gas flaring indices, according to the 2020 Global Gas Flaring Tracker report. With Nigeria's commitment to achieving climate justice and sustainability, as well as developing infrastructure, particularly in the Niger Delta environment, the option of green bonds is justifiable. Stakeholders further assert that Ogoni Land Cleanup Project, which is to be extended to other polluted areas in the Niger Delta, currently requires more funds. Infrastructural deficits in the oil-producing communities have continued to generate agitations, and green bonds will be a viable alternative to financing these projects.
Borrowing to enhance the environment, to ensure that we have a green economy, which the whole world is moving. It's a good way. I mean, it's whichever way you want to use to finance it. A green economy is what everybody is asking for. Government should use this kind of money to encourage, reforestation. Go back to those places where the forest used to exist and replant these trees so that the future generation can have trees. And the more trees you plant, or the more forests you create, the more green the environment becomes, the more they can help us to absorb this carbon from the atmosphere.
Even if you have all the hospitals, the best hospitals in the Niger Delta, and yet you still have the conservative factor, gas flaring is everywhere. So it means that there will be no end in sight to such problem. So we'll first of all attack the root cause, by ensuring that the environment is protected, which can guarantee sustainable development.
The concern, however, is the utilization of the bonds among policymakers in the area of implementation, as well as the current burden of debts in the country.
This year's budget is 49.7 trillion. That's enough money to be able to drive projects. But by the way, too much money can create inflation. If you bring too much money into this economy, you create inflation. Already we have enough. Let us see how we use this one we have efficiently. We should not borrow more.
My worry is that implementation becomes a problem. But again, they should also target, areas where you have very, very, very devastating environmental conditions.
Experts believe that if the nation's economy is developed, direct foreign investments will be attracted, thus reducing the burdens generated by the bond. In Port Harcourt, Robinson Derateide.
All right, from Port Harcourt, we go on to a next report from Sokoto.
Sokoto State is grappling with severe environmental challenges, including desertification, erosion, and climate change, which have devastating consequences. In 2024, many parts of the state experienced floods, resulting in submerged farms and loss of lives. Despite being endowed with abundant sunshine, Sokoto State continues to rely heavily on fossil fuels and continued indiscriminate felling of trees, worsening the impact of climate change. However, experts believe that green bonds can be a game changer. Environment expert Dr. Ayubadan Asabi Umar emphasizes that leveraging green bonds can reduce the state's vulnerability to climate change and enhance food security.
Green bonds are of great importance. Why? Because it will facilitate the implementation of what is and could be referred to as clean technology. Organizations that have got the appropriate funds to support, please be at our doorsteps and assist us as appropriate, with a view to see to the improvement of the quality of lives of our citizens.
Globally, green bonds have emerged as a vital financing mechanism supporting environmental sustainability and promoting climate action. The Sokoto State government has expressed its commitment to utilizing green bonds to tackle environmental challenges.
We have the work plan and we are working towards it. We have linked up with the State Ministry of Works and we are doing everything possible to make sure that by February, God willing, we will commence our activity, because what we have just been waiting for is the counter fund to be paid. And once that counter fund is paid, the activity commences.
By doing so, the state can access financing for projects that support its environmental goals, promote sustainable development, and foster climate resilience. As the state continues to explore the potential of green bonds, it is clear that this financing mechanism can play a crucial role in addressing Nigeria's environmental challenges. In Sokoto, Dalhatu Abdullahi.
Right, back to the studio here. If we take a cue from this report that's just ended, the kind of environmental challenges you find not just in Sokoto, but in many parts of the north, including the northeast, where alarm has been raised over the challenges resulting from desertification, the shrinking of the Lake Chad, and the consequences, which again are partly been blamed for the kind of insecurity that you see in the northeast. Now, utilizing the green bonds, yes, the experts say this would be a source of financing sustainable, eco-friendly development here, but we have never been short of these ideas. And if you ask and say, what are the deliberate steps beyond securing funding that the country is taking as to change attitudes to so many things that we engage in? How deeply rooted are these policies to guarantee that it's not just developing a financial base, but applying it properly? As you heard some of the respondents say in those reports, it's the application that usually is a problem.
Well, thank you very much for outlining some of these things. But let me go back to one of the things we were discussing earlier, and which has to do with the time frame within which to hit net zero and all that. And I'm going to tie it to the issue that you just mentioned about how far-reaching are the policies. In that case, I'm going to the law on climate change. You know, before the former president made the pronouncement, by the time he made the pronouncement during COP26 in Glasgow about us hitting net zero by 2060, by then the law had not been signed, had not assented to the Climate Change Act. But I know that in the Climate Change Act, we realized our position, and therefore we thought very far and said we were going to hit net zero between 2050 to 2070. That's what the law says. So this other one we've been talking about, 2060, is just in between. That's not to say that we're going to relax, you know, but we're going to work towards that. Now, on the issue of far-reaching policies, yes, there are policies in place. And, you know, we have a problem when we put in policies and then they suffer somersault. And that is why we have a law. That's an act on climate change that has, you know, exhaustively outlined approaches to be adopted. Of course, contained there is this issue of sovereign bond. It's there also in the law. Then plus the other bond that we're talking about in section 15 of the Act. The laws are there. All we need to do is to ensure that we implement what is contained in the law in such a way that it's clear to people that these are the things we're supposed to do. Climate change is not something that starts today and ends tomorrow. And that's why that you also, I'll perhaps again refer to the law, that we realized this and said, we have to make provisions for this to be taught in primary school, for this to be taught in secondary school, and for this to be taught in the tertiary institutions. It's in section 26 of the Act. And we didn't stop there. We also said, look, if you finish, as is contained in section 22 of the Act, that every ministry, department, and agency of government should have a climate change desk that is chaired by somebody not below the rank of a director. So if you look at these things and look at the fact that Mr. President has done well in exercising leadership as far as climate change issue is concerned, recall that when he delivered his first appropriation bill or budget address to the National Assembly, if you go to sections 23, 24, and 25 of that budget address, you will find where he said specifically that government was going to use climate change as a way of supporting investment. So from the approaches that he has adopted and the actions he has taken as a leader, you will recall that after that speech, he came to Dubai, participated in several meetings, enacted the initiated the carbon market initiative by appointing the Director General of National Council on Climate Change, which of course he chairs, as well as the chairman of FIRS, to be able to coordinate all this. So here and there, policies have been, put into place, relying on the law, and strict and, effective implementation of the provisions of the law. These things have the potential to guide us towards achieving these outlines that are stated in Section 1 of the Act.
Okay. Still so many issues that we would need to interrogate there. Yes, Prof.
I think it's fair enough for Nigeria to demonstrate that we have achieved a high level of sensitization of the entire population, raised that awareness, taking the first step of government. This is borrowing, though. I want you to know that this is borrowing. Bond is borrowing.
Yes, but
you have to understand that, we are doing our best. We are doing our best by demonstrating that we've fulfilled all righteousness, we've ticked all the boxes, but there are commitments. After all, we didn't start all this palaver. We are just on the receiving end. There are commitments by the global community that taxes have to be paid for those who are polluting. And the proceeds of that tax needs to be made available to those of us who are having the obligation to deliver.
A key thing you've just mentioned now, as you started talking, you said that we have gone so far as we've created awareness. Have we? Have we really?
We have. Environmental impact assessment is almost mandatory. Anything you want to do now, you want to do something in your house or factory, you have to produce that.
That awareness is, well, if you permit me to use the word, is among the elite. If you say you have created it, have we really created this awareness down to the grassroots? Do we see practices in our villages? Right now, you're still battling with the concept of energy for so many needs. Cooking, fuel.
Maybe I'll intervene here and perhaps help you with some things that have been done and some that have actually not been completed. In terms of awareness, maybe we have not attained that level that will probably guide us in making sure that everyone is on board. But then that is tied into requiring those that develop curricula for primary, secondary, and this thing, to make sure that this awareness begins from that level up. But in addition to that, the law requires the agencies that are implementing to engage with the media, with the civil society organizations. It's all outlined in the law. I think one of the things we need to do actually is to encourage our people to study the law on climate change, because like I said, the president is the chairman of the National Council on Climate Change. And with the leadership he has exercised, it is important for some other, and I will explain to you why it was structured that way, because with him being the appointer of Minister A, powerful minister, not so powerful minister, when he directs, when he guides, just like he did when he came to Dubai, you discover that everyone is supposed to be on board. That awareness is there, but we can do a little more by engaging the National Orientation Agency and some other arms of the government. But for the law to say every ministry, department, and agency within the territorial state called Nigeria is affected by the provisions of the Act. So it's just implementation.
Let me address two things he said. Right. Awareness. So what we have in the Ministry of Environment, what we realized that something we saw in COP 28 in Dubai, where the UAE said they are going back to their traditional roots because their people were surviving when technology was not this good. Right. So they were cooling their houses without ECs. we looked at our own country and realized that we had some traditional practices that were geared towards biodiversity preservation. For instance, you have some cultures that will say you cannot hunt. You can only hunt once a certain period. Mm-hmm. That was to preserve animals. Yeah. We have the Argungu festival where you fish only once, and that is for regeneration. So the awareness is now going back to the traditional practices that the people at the grassroots understand better. So you know not to destroy all your trees, and that kind of awareness.
It's part of what I was referring to, because I mean, if you tell the people do not destroy the trees, do not cut down the trees to use as a firewood, yes, for cooking fuel, the first thing is, what are the alternatives? For them, it used to be cheaper to say we use charcoal. Now you bring the issue of charcoal and, of course, environmental.
Yeah, so issues. That is supported with a clean cooking stove policy has been launched in Nigeria, and there's a huge rollout of clean cooking stove to the grassroots.
That may well be so, but again, the huge rollout. Perhaps we can ask Dr. Anthony here to help us out with what do the data say about how far-reaching these are. In the first place, we might ask that if we were to take the level of Nigeria's status or position in emitting these gases, looking at not just within Africa, some of the countries, where would you place us? What do the figures say?
Okay. So before I answer your question, now, this current policy of embarking on productive activity that is environmental friendly, yes, all the growth model that I've studied, they all talk about factor intensity. That means use the factor you have intensively to grow your economy. The so-called developed world economy, they use their factor intensively to industrialize, to get to where they are today, with good regulatory framework. Now, can't we also use our factors intensively with good regulatory framework? The man from environment can help me with this one. Good regulatory framework, so that we can also, because we cannot have what we call simultaneous growth model. Our income hasn't reached that level. It hasn't reached that level. So why can't we use our fossil fuel for now with good regulatory framework? Why can't we use other things that they are saying, which I believe is not eco-friendly, with good regulatory framework, so that we can have enough capital base to move?
Let
me finish. Okay. To move into this other area that we call environmental friendly investment policies or strategy. If we can optimize the resources we have now with good regulatory framework and with good ethics, I think we get there. That's number one. Then number two, I will talk as an economist and as a price expert. Mm-hmm. The alternative they are giving to us, their price level is not affordable to average Nigerians. Look at gas, cooking gas, compared to firewood. You can see the gap. Even though one is more environmental friendly, which is gas, firewood not environmental friendly, but the prices of the two are not the same.
Affordability
comes in. That's the price I'm talking about. Okay. So I will advise our colleague from Federal Ministry of Environment, in the short run, for us to get to that level where we can compete favorably with the developed world, a good regulatory framework will help a lot. If we have a good regulatory framework, all this oil pollution in the south, in the oil producing state in Nigeria, will not be there. The water they are polluting, the air they are polluting with flaring of gas. If we have a workable regulatory framework, it will not be there. It will not be there. So on the issue of data about the
level, how would you classify us?
As I said, National Bureau of Statistics needs to be fully funded to carry out survey and census that will cover all socioeconomic structure.
Yes, you know why I'm asking this is because when they tell us, they come with their figures and say, this is what you do. Let's be in a position where we can take what they say we are and look at what we
really
know we are here. But Professor, if there's...
sorry,
yes.
I just wanted to add something to what he just said. There are two issues. You heard two positions, and not that they are outrightly contradictory in view of what we are discussing, but it's just that we need to create this explanation and awareness so that our people don't get it wrong. Now, you mentioned the issue of national cooking policy, which was a well thought out plan by the government. It took a while before the policy was announced. I think about April last year. I was attending a conference when it was announced. And it has very many positive ways. And what is laying on ground right now is that we should begin to work towards its successful implementation. Why am I saying so? He tried to draw a comparison between, you use gas. Gas is fairly expensive, perhaps not affordable. Then you use firewood. The other side is that if you read the foreword by the then Minister of State for Environment, Isiaka Salako, you would find that there he was able to state that we experienced about 77,000 fatalities in the country as a result of using that. And if you move this further to the African level, where about nearly 1 billion people do not have access, nearly 1 billion people, about 930, 950 do not have access to clean cooking. From what the International Energy Agency stated when they had the first, clean cooking summit, that was also in May last year. They said 500,000 in Africa of women and children. But from what our own African Development Bank said, it said about 600,000 die from respiratory challenges coming from that kind of thing. So the reason I said it is not outrightly contradictory, but it's important for us to clarify that is because we should be working towards achieving that goal. Because when you talk about firewood and all that, you probably do not know how much harm. In fact, the World Health Organization Director General stated that about 3.2 million people die all over the world, but most of them are in Africa. So we have a duty to be able to project to what is right, encourage our people, work towards it, realize it. That's why we are in leadership position.
Now, let me say something. What I'm saying is this. I'm not saying we should not pursue that strategy, but things should be put in place.
So let me,
before we can say we should go for gas, using gas fully, you must make sure the price of gas is readily available, is affordable to average Nigerians.
Clean cooking is not gas. It's not necessarily gas. Okay. So they are biofuels. So they are called clean cooking stoves. Yeah. They are made for the poor.
They could use ethanol. They could use
kerosene. They are biofuels that you use.
How affordable are those things?
They are very affordable. They are cheap.
How many Nigerians are aware of what you are saying?
This is what
So
in the rural areas.
Yes, it's actually focused.
Millions are being distributed. And we are doing bioethanol now.
Let me tell you what one person I met, someone that produces clean cooking stoves, told me. He is mandated by someone that is someone from the West, a company from the West that is trying to gain carbon credits, to distribute for free 1 million clean cooking stoves.
That was good.
So those initiatives, so now that the federal government has launched the policy, it's easier to, you have something to ride on. Then let me address your factor intensity. What you use what you have to get what you want.
With good regulatory framework.
Yes, but this is Nigeria. We had a lot of trees. We used what we have to get what we want. We now have the worst forest cover in the world.
We did not have a good regulatory framework.
Even with the regulatory framework,
the deforestation.
I know. Even the regulatory framework, to regenerate a tree is not in your lifetime.
Yeah.
You will cut it. The tree, you didn't know when it was planted. You cut it and sell it to China that has 33% cover. We have 3.7% cover. Recommendation, 25%. That is why last year was that hot. Abuja was the hottest part of the country last year. It will be worse this year. We don't have trees, and we keep cutting them.
Yeah,
that's why I talk of regulatory.
When there was a question you asked about where are we in terms of ranking. And I have to tell you this. If you look at all the countries in the world since the Paris Agreement was signed, how many of them have delivered the legal framework which you described? How many of them have gone ahead to launch the first bond, which we did in 2018? We were the first in Africa. And then we came back and did even another one in 2019. And then we became the first in the world to adopt the standard. Right. And then we have the Moody come to certify, granted GB1, which is excellent. And then we have, so there are many things we are doing just to show that we are committed. But I have to tell you this, we are not committed because we want to just do what they want us to do, but it is a way of diversifying our economy. Secondly, we have to come to a point where our president should begin to tell these people to put their resources where their mouth is. The greater polluters should bring the resources that have been pledged so that we can access those. Those who are accessing it are trying to give us the stoves free. We want to access them so that when we are doing the things in our farms,
which is the point,
and producing the crops and doing the things, we want to draw down the carbon credit and carbon finance. We have to bring the money.
Which is the point that we're trying to make here, because those countries are going to still find a way to take advantage. Well, you will keep scoring first.
Yeah, and reduce the price of the, if you say that wind is the way to go, reduce the price of the wind farm. If you say that solar, reduce the price of the solar cells. So reduce those
make
costs.
It affordable to
make it absolutely.
But it's also important for us to state that these prices have been moving down.
Yes.
You know, we have to state facts.
Technologies,
because a lot of people are listening to us across the world from this. These prices are coming down. It's important to know that you want to do something and you set out to do. That's why I have credited or acknowledged some of the actions that Mr. President has taken. And it is up to us. Like I said, he chairs the National Council on Climate Change, and the law is there. So we have, all hands have to be on deck to create the needed awareness and then ensure that we tell people the right thing and then let them work towards it. So that's exactly what we're trying to do, because you are talking about efforts we are making, other efforts. We're also talking about nature-based solutions as a way of addressing the challenges that we're having from climate change. And that's, go to section 27, then you come down to 26 of the Act. You see that these things are all clearly outlined. It is for us as a people, exercise leadership in a coordinated manner, because these things are interconnected, and that way we'll be able to arrive where we want to.
On that thing on the clean cooking stove, it's very simple technology. So it's even a business for you to engage in. It's very simple. You can use everyday materials that are considered waste. So it is one of the plugs of our circular economy that we're trying to launch. So it's something that any cottage industry can build, because the actual thing is actually the biofuel, which you can produce with so many materials. Corn husk, the chaff from rice.
And about degradable elements.
Exactly. So it's clean. Like that firewood you're talking about that is cheaper. 1 meal is like smoking 100 cigarettes. That is why you have the respiratory issues. So what is the trade-off?
Yeah.
You buy wood for cheap, but you're going to spend all the money all the money you save in the hospital.
A lot of social cost.
Exactly.
Right. Well, at this point, we'll take a short break. When we return, the conversation will continue. I'd like to go in the direction of agriculture, for instance, and what the green agriculture has been referred to at this time, and other matters arising from that. But again, we would, at that time, open the phone lines, which means you can join in the conversation in the studio. Stay with us. We'll be right back after these messages.
The counsel of our fathers.
I will urge and advise our younger generation to use talent and brain to sort out problems, not arms.
Nigerian youths, let's build our nation.
My advice to these young people is please
do not take us back to those harrowing days. You probably do not know what it is.
I believe we have fought one civil war too many in this country. So those who experience it will run away from it.
Nigerian youths, let's build our nation together.
NTA Tuesday Live, a network issue-oriented innovation talk show.
Thanks for staying with us. We're still talking about leveraging the green bond, foreign direct investment, diversify Nigeria's economy, and grow sustainable and environmentally friendly projects. This segment, the phone lines will be open. The numbers to call will be on your screens. You can take advantage of those and call in. And we say this every Tuesday. If you're calling in and you get through to the studio, do us a favor, turn down the volume of your TV set to avoid the echo or the hurlback. And we also encourage you to go straight to the point so that others can also get on the platform and contribute. Hello would do. And so, starting off this segment, we have a couple of reports. This one is coming from Abuja.
It has a thriving economy with approximately a huge number of registered companies operating in various sectors, presenting a promising backdrop for economic and industrial development with attendant environmental challenges. For Ogun State, to avoid some of the pitfalls of most industrialized cities, especially in the area of environmental problems, it must take advantage of the green bonds.
Ogun State stands in a good stead, in benefiting from the positivity of this initiative.
While Ogun State ranks fourth among the top 10 states in Nigeria with the highest internally generated revenue, its economic performance is impressive, while government and investors can raise capital through the green bonds for initiatives that promote sustainability, climate justice, and environmental protection.
So basically, it's another avenue for those who may wish to go into investing heavily in the green energy sector and to be able to latch on to. And of course, with that, to be able to promote green energy revolution because that's where the world is going now.
Financial analysts believe that green bonds would enhance environmentally sound and sustainable future for Ogun State and underscore the need for commitment to green bonds which will support environmentally friendly projects and promote economic competitiveness. The green bonds are strategic steps towards achieving a sustainable and environmentally sound future. In Abeokuta, Oyin Consola Ojelade.
And our next report is from Anambra.
Green bonds are financial instruments specifically designed to raise capital for projects that have positive environmental impacts. The decision to utilize green bonds for foreign direct investment comes at a time when Anambra is seeking to ramp up its efforts towards achieving a more sustainable and eco-friendly business environment. By tapping into the growing global market for green investments, Anambra aims to not only attract much needed foreign capital, but also to position itself as a leader in sustainable development in Nigeria.
We benefited, but it was in the area of tree planting. We've established the fact that the federal government assisted the state in planting teak trees at Ebenebe in 2018 through the Green Bond project.
that we are opening up to investors who also care about the environment and all sustainable activities and saying, come in, let's do this together, at least for the return that, whatever return we agree on. So this is an improvement, and I would say that Anambra State will exploit, and we know that generally this is part of our own contribution to developing the climate, the environment as we go along.
By funding projects that promote renewable energy, waste management, biodiversity conservation, and other environmentally friendly activities, the state will be able to reduce its carbon footprint and create a healthier environment for its residents.
The overall plan is to seek how the state can fully integrate herself with these green bonds to be able to attract funding.
Anambra State is something we are careful about. So around the financing, I think we are still, like we usually will say, we will get to the market. We are not in the financial market yet. We are trying to see how much we can, as a state, do with the resources available to us. But certainly, I will say that we have a whole lot of projects that could be financed through this bond.
As the state transitions towards a more sustainable economy, it is likely to attract even more foreign investors who are committed to supporting environmentally responsible projects. In Oka, Ndamkalo.
All right, yeah, we're back in the studio here, and after viewing those reports, I did say I'd like to go in the direction of agriculture and the green agriculture. And of course, increasing production. At some point in time, these things change over time. At some point in time, the concept was to cultivate larger, pieces of portions of land. But again, that has also come under strict scrutiny, where you can produce more from a smaller patch of land, and the questions raised about destruction of foliage, the trees, the greenery in developing massive farms. But again, it takes us to the other aspect of technology helping out in agriculture. Hybrid seeds that have been produced that the farmers cannot replant and would still have to go back to those places where those seeds come from. The question here is, with all the encouragement we get, doesn't it seem that at some point in time, the developed nations still have a way out as to keep making countries that are developing still dependent while accepting their recommendations? In other words, the second new colonialism, which has been talked about.
Yeah, the good thing is the country actually is mitigating against that. We have an agency under the Ministry of Environment called NBMA. They regulate GMO, genetically modified organisms. So they support the production and technology behind modified seeds, like the things that IIT are doing and a few other people that develop the seeds. So the government actually makes provisions for the farmers to get this higher breed seeds that are less prone to pests, and so you don't degrade the environment by using pesticides. So we are developing our own technology in that wise. We are not yet there. We've not done all the seeds that we need to, but we are definitely developing our own technology.
Yeah, well, Prof, interesting thing about this is it's still borrowing, isn't it?
Well, if we have
I mean, that's the layman's term for it.
We needed to borrow just to show that we are committed. But that's what I keep saying, that, yeah, we have shown everything. We've done everything that they wanted. But we now have to say to them, look, we want to see the color of your money. Those monies that you have pledged, those taxes you are collecting from the defaulters, bring those money on shore, on board. I think we need to press more. And we have a president that doesn't care. He will say it, just as he told China, look, go and increase this money on swap. So we need him to go down heavy on that agenda. But as you are talking about the GMOs, there are other organizations like we have Nigeria, we have BSA, we have agencies that actually regulate. Even Seeds Council is involved. My company is involved in cassava bioethanol value chain development. It's a concession. So we are regulated by the National Seed Council, and then you have the Biosafety Agency. We also have, we work with IITA that does the real thing with the Umudike seed crops. So they are not in the GMO area. Those people stop you from trying anything different. That's because we do our things. And they have so many companies that are now emerging to multiply seeds with high yield potential. So obviously, also, you've just seen the video about Anambra trying to do something on afforestation. Much as we are looking to do more on food security, because we got to produce food,
right?
But not the one that will destroy our environment,
okay.
which is your concern.
Yeah, okay. And then, of course, climate change mitigation is capital intensive. Yes, the Green Bonds Program initiative is an aspect of it.
And climate smart agriculture as well. We have quite a few of those.
So what else is there often beyond this? Because tendencies to say, yes, we're floating as a green bond, and that's it. It's not the silver bullet, is it?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, you're right. Actually, the government doesn't do the business. It's the private sector that does the business. All that the government does is to create the necessary law, a necessary regulatory framework, and then show the example. And they've shown the example that we can use sovereign bond to actually get this whole agenda started. But in the end of the day, we need to bring private sector, get their confidence, de-risk the areas that they don't want, make the banking community and development finance community to engage, and then sweeten their path by letting the other ones that they pledged overhead to drop. In that way, the private sector have the confidence to invest. Because it's about taking risks. But you have to de-risk the areas that they are very, very concerned about. So that's how this whole thing become internalized.
Right.
And of course, you have to soften the market, which is part of the sensitization schemes, and create more awareness and get the market much ready to accept the products.
Exactly. So this is the direction that I want us to go in now, and that is creating that environment where the private sector can confidently engage.
Okay, thank you for steering your conversation towards that side. You asked questions about green bond, what we've been able to do. It is also important to specify or say particularly, for instance, the first one were used particularly in about 7 universities to create renewable energy for students to access energy to be able to do their studies and all that. And they were largely successful. Because even when we are talking about the challenges we have, it is also important for us to acknowledge areas where we have made successes so that that serve as motivation for us to go forward. Now, on the side of private sector, government is also looking at the aspects, not the sovereign bond, the other kind of bond that involves the private sector. And that's why you have found these, within the stock exchange and all that. The government is also doing a lot more to ensure that people understand this better. I mean, I just said that the president acted as the main chief marketing officer of the country by discussing the successes we have recorded at that level, at the summit, and then encouraging investors from outside to come and participate in the third tranche of the bond. So the private sector is being encouraged through policies that are encouraging, and then together we'll be able to do this. No longer going to be sovereign, but you combine the two to be able to have what you want.
All right, let's get to let's get to the phones and then we'll come to you. If I have a first caller on the line now, Manny calling in from Lagos. Hello, Manny. Go ahead. Good evening,
Hello,
Mani. Yes.
can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go right ahead, please.
Okay. My question is, why is the green bond denominated in US dollars? Why can't you use the currency for people to invest? Why must you use US dollars for the investment?
Right. Okay, thank you, Manny. Yes.
Thank you, Manny. The green bond is actually a Naira investment, but done a USD green bond. It's only for reporting because it's a global reporting. People from outside the country look at what you are doing. So we report it in dollars, but it's essentially in Naira. The first green bond was 10.19 billion Naira. The second one was 15.7 billion Naira. And the one we're about to issue is 50 billion Naira. We've not issued any green bond in USD.
All right. Okay. Yes. You were going to make a point before
yes,
that call came through.
On the, what was it again?
Yes, because we had just finished talking about the other aspects.
The corporate
of
bonds.
The corporate, yes.
The corporate bonds. So it's not what the government is trying to do. Corporate bonds have already been issued. Mm-hmm. In fact, we have more corporate green bonds than the sovereign as of today. The corporate green bonds, like 4 North-South companies have issued corporate green bonds twice. Access Bank and One Solar something. They have issued corporate green bonds, totaling over 33 billion. While the federal government green bonds total is about 25 billion until we issue this next one.
Okay.
So corporate bonds have started. It's just to put more incentives and bring more corporates on board to issue, and not only the corporates, the subnationals. You see, for environment, what the federal government does, like he said, is give examples, prototypes. Okay. The environment exists in the states. Not Abuja is the only place really owned by the federal government. So it's prototypes, and I know Gombe State is preparing to issue a bond, a green bond.
Right, let's go back to the phones. We have Abdullahi calling in from Kano. Hello, Abdullahi, go ahead. Yes, Abdullahi.
He has gone.
Are you still with us? No, I think we've lost that call. So let's try and keep the calls coming through, and we're back here. Yes. Well, again, looking at other strategies that might help contribute to raising the capital for climate change mitigation. Yes, we've said the sovereign green bonds. And we have also agreed that it is capital intensive. So where would other areas be to look into in terms of raising financing for these green projects? And of course, more importantly too, what sort of green projects would we be looking at investors coming into joining? Right.
Okay, so essentially, to develop this green bond markets, what we need to do is have a pipeline of bankable, investable projects. Projects that essentially can generate returns. I can give you so many instances. So we say we are doing afforestation and we plant economic trees that can be used for maybe biodiesel. There are plants that what they produce can be used for biodiesel. That is big business. It is diesel not from fossil fuel, diesel from plants.
Or bearing plants.
Yeah, exactly.
Like jatropha.
Jatropha. There's moringa. There are a lot of economic trees, and what you are doing is you are killing two birds with one stone. So you are encouraging industry and reforestation or afforestation, as the case may
Castor oil
be.
bean.
Yes. So there are so many things that you can get from nature, which these funds can be invested in that will generate returns. And these are verifiable returns. So it's something that you can do a full business plan on and know how much you can generate. So it now makes it economic. A lot of what the government has done might not necessarily on the surface generate any returns. But
because they're costly.
yes,
Right.
it's a
Okay,
costly.
so yes, as you say that, because I'm thinking about what multiplier effects, what the government has done may not necessarily be what you see.
Return.
Yes, so that
monetary-wise.
Yes.
Immediate returns. So
I
if
can give you an example, what I'm involved in anyway. Nigeria is the biggest producer of cassava in the world. We do 25% of world cassava, 64 million metric tons. And cassava gives you the highest yield of ethanol. 1 metric ton of wet cassava gives you 150 liters of ethanol. If you make it dry, it will give you 370 liters of ethanol. The next in line is sugarcane. Sugarcane is in Nigeria. Cassava, we are #1 in the world. We are wasting 40% of our cassava by post-harvest loss. So the program that, I don't really like talking about my program, but that's what we are doing.
Well,
It's
the
a
thing
national
is,
program. But that shows you what Nigeria can do. We can do a lot, more than anybody in the world, by tripling that our output and by giving us what the industry needs 10 million liters of bioethanol to blend with the petrol PMS. Dangote needs twice that amount. So, and we are nowhere producing even 1% of what we need.
This is why I'm raising the question about the conditions under which the private sector can begin to take advantage of these opportunities. And so that's why I asked the question initially and say, what is on ground to encourage? Apart from, well, you said the government has shown leadership. Initially, you talked about creating the environment where there will be bankable
projects. Yes.
Projects. Okay, let's take this call. Augustine calling in from Lagos. Hello.
Hello, good evening.
Yes, good evening.
Yeah, please, I would like the man with the price experts to please throw one light on the cost effect of this green bond issue.
Okay.
That will lead to, to the goodness or the goodies of the commoners in question. That's what I want. That's my question for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Augustine. Right. Well, all he's saying is that, well, we've been talking, and for very many Nigerians, we've been talking above their heads. So let the citizen, the ordinary folks like me on the streets, get to know how these green bonds will impact his life. Going to what Dr. Anthony has talked about, inflation, having more production where the price of food can come down, seeing the fact that climate change can affect production and level of food available and affordability as well.
Okay, so one of the pillars of green bond is use of proceeds. So what are the proceeds used for? If I use the proceeds of green bond to, say, regenerate semi-arid land, it means you have farmland. So we are ensuring food security. The flooding we spoke about, if we use it for flood mitigation, that is watershed management, channelways, opening up channelways, erosion control, it means I am affecting your livelihood directly, because it means you will not be displaced from your home. Your farmland will not be eroded. So those are the direct effects on the citizens, like you put it. In fact, a major principle of the green bond is it has to have positive impact on the livelihood of the individuals in the country. So everything that the green bond addresses is for, it's towards livelihood. So yes, there might be a lot of high finance being spoken on green bonds, but that's not the finance side.
Right.
But on the use of funds, use of proceeds, it's direct. It should directly impact the citizens.
I think as an individual,
yes,
if I invest my limited resources in this bond, what is my expectation?
Oh, right. Okay, so
that is what it was.
So
what is my expectation?
It's just returns.
Is this green bond the same as normal?
It's a normal bond.
Credit instrument. I can buy bond, federal government bond.
It is the same as the federal government bond.
Only is the rate the same?
The rate sometimes are slightly higher, but DMO determines that based on the appetite in the market at the time they are issuing the bonds. Supply. Yes, but so you get returns like any other financial instruments. Yes.
Okay, back to the phones. We have John calling in from Lagos. Hello, John.
Okay, back to the phone. Hello?
Yes, go ahead.
Lagos. Hello, John. Hello.
John, go ahead. I can hear the hurlback from your TV. We did say at the start for you to turn down the volume so we avoid the echo.
Good evening.
Good evening, John. I can still hear myself. The echo
Hello,
from
good
your
evening.
TV. Good evening. Go ahead. Turn down the volume of your TV and ask your question or make your comment.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Slow down.
All right. I think perhaps, John, you'd have to call back later on. And still other callers on the lines trying to get through.
And let me say something
yes.
as well. The investment area you mentioned now, how many investors will be patient enough for you to use their limited resources to plant forests based on the gestation period? Most investors today are more of short-term investors. The area you are going to invest these limited resources on are long-term. So how many investors will be patient enough to give you their money and they will get their return? Is my question well understood? I'm talking as if I'm also
yes, I
listeners outside.
So I'm an investor. For instance, I'm an investor. I'm a regular fixed income investor. Fixed income, if you're not American, they are the ones that have 100-year bonds.
Okay.
We do 5 years, 7 years. Okay. So that is for you, an investor, returns. But we are saying, you know, for sovereign green bonds, the federal government is borrowing money. That's what it means. It's a borrowing.
Now, again, as somebody that has the data,
yes.
Debt sustainability now, yes. What are we going to talk about it? Now, to give you another news, when we rebase our GDP by the end of this month, there are some social and secondary indicators that will change because we're expecting a greater output level after the rebasing. The debt to GDP ratio will change. It may seem favorable to borrow more, but we have to decide whether it's favorable or not. Tax to revenue and tax to GDP also will be wider after the rebasing. We have to think very well. So my question is that what is the sustainability because of the debt burden we are passing through in Nigeria today? Sorry, I ought to be contributing, but I'm asking you a question.
Yes, because you have talked to a financial expert. However, yes, like I said, Nigeria always has an annual borrowing plan.
Okay.
The green bond, like the Sukuk, the Euro bond, all fits. It's just like struggling for budget money. The same, we on the bond side, we struggle for space on the borrowing plan.
The same envelope.
The experts, you guys, will tell us what is sustainable to borrow.
Okay.
While we work with that. So that determines how much we will launch. And, you know, the green bond is a budget support instrument, basically, supporting the sovereign, the country's budget. So our budget is so in that deficit, that's where we sit.
Okay, let me just attempt your answer. You see, we have a subsisting law, fiscal law, It's called Fiscal Responsibility Act 2007. Okay. It tells you what you should borrow on. It says money can only be borrowed for capital expenditure or human resource development. And then it says this is for concessionary rates, which we understand to be less than 3%. It's for long-term borrowing, which we understand to be 10 to more years. And then it said there must be cost-benefit analysis to support that. And that's what touches your question.
Okay.
So all of those would have been looked
Consider.
at before it enters into the budget plan and all that stuff.
All right, so let's try the phones now. Ame from Benue, I believe.
Good evening, Mr. Cyril Stoba.
Good evening, go ahead.
Okay, good evening. Thank you very much. It's a very good topic. You said something, while I was listening, I heard that we are one of the first few nations to key into this green stuff. It's important to also ask, why are we so much in a haste to do this? Because if you look at the other nations, the one we call the first world, a lot of them use these dirty energy sources, so to say, to build the current economy they have. For instance, we have our coal locked up. We really are not using it for anything. Soon, we will have to stop using our petrol and fossil fuel. Why can't we use the dirty energy to build something more sustainable before we go all green like this? That's an aspect of it that I want us to keep thinking about. Because it looks like whenever we get to a goalpost, it is shifted. So we always have to depend on an energy products that are made from clean energy, but we don't have such energy to use to produce things for ourselves. And then we discard those energy we have because they are dirty. And like Cyril Stoba rightly pointed out, what is even our contribution to this global pollution and all this stuff? It's very minimal. So my own opinion is that for now, we should give people the opportunity to use the kind of energy available, encourage people, and then when we are sustainable enough, when we have sufficient energy to power our economy and our economy have grown sufficiently and sustainably, we can then start switching. That's how other nations do it, so that we don't have to keep depending on things produced in the first world, and then whenever we get to that economy, it is discarded, and then we can't continue. So it's something we should also look out for as we key into these global trends. Thank you.
Right, thank you, Ame. I think our guests here will all, and each one would address what you have raised. Yes.
Okay, I think we spoke about this before. Like we said, it's a balance being created. While we exploit our natural resources, we want to exploit them in a responsible way. So it's not necessarily stifling our development, because in some cases, environmental friendly practices are actually cheaper than the dirty practices. And going by today's world, of course, a lot of technology has shifted to sustainable practices. So you might not even be able to find the technology to do the development in that old way anymore. I doubt you'll see locomotive trains that use coal produced anymore. So what do? You want to start building one. It might even be more expensive than using the newer ones.
Right, Prof, and as you address that, let's also keep in mind that one of the biggest polluters in the world, the US, under its new president, is pulled out of the Paris Agreement. What's the import of that?
Well, the question is, what is next? What's next? Is out of Paris Agreement? Yeah, is out of WHO. Is it going to go out of World Bank, IMF, then National Security Council, and then NATO? We want to let the music play, because I believe that he has a view of the world that is an abstraction from reality. It's just not reality. But anyway, it will be a discussion for another day. But I think the case has actually been made that, one, first and foremost, we want to develop our own economy. And you said focus on the area where we have comparative advantage and then intensified resources in that direction. And that's what we are doing. We are very good in natural resources. That's why we're in equatorial climate. We have all the climate. We have a swamp, we have a tropical, we have a Guinea savanna, we have a Sudan savanna, we have Sahel. We have all of them. And this whole thing is how to make sure we can capitalize on those natural resources God has placed Nigeria in. And you've also made the point that even the technology of the old that you are saying, don't agree, you can't get it now. If you get it, it's very, very expensive because we have to follow the trend. Follow where the cost, if the cost economy is coming down in this new direction and we are comfortable with it, then we have to flow in the direction of creating jobs for people and being able to assure ourselves food security and nutrition. So, we just have to flow in our own interest. And I don't think we are doing anything other than that. But we are trying to cross the T's and dot the I's because I'm seeing government doing more than enough to show that strategic direction and show us how to. And the private sector is responding when we are issuing corporate bonds, which means that the private sectors are beginning to see profitability. And so if they are following, then let's follow the private sector. In the end of the day, government does not do any business. It doesn't trade. It doesn't produce anything. It is the private sector that does it. And if the evidence is that the private sector are keying in and we are going to be better for it, and whatever we are doing is going to be environmentally sustainable, then let's go.
Right. Honorable Simon Igbo.
Yeah, thank you very much. I would like to address a little bit of what our caller said about why we bordering ourselves, to follow what is going on. Well, one, we've committed ourselves to a number of international agreements, the Paris Agreement on climate change, and so many other agreements that we've committed to. And we're a responsible nation. The other thing I would like to say, actually, is that he's concerned that, we should go back to this and that. I would like to emphasize here that, look, we depend on fossil fuel for a lot of things that we are doing. And globally, the people who are major, buyers or the markets that we sell to, they are all racing away towards renewable. One is China, the other one is India, and so many of the Western countries. In fact, some of them have moved to the point where renewable is responsible for close to 60-61% of their total energy. So what that means over time is that perhaps you will have your critical assets and you are not finding market for it. So it is important for us to begin to work now on how to transition away, while we're also using the resources that we have to see how we can build our economy. I think it's risky to say, we want to go back to the other system when others are moving away, and those who are moving away are the ones who are buying from you. So we need to be guided about that. And on the issue of somebody who has withdrawn, well, if anybody wants to go back to George Washington, 1796 years of extreme isolationism, by the United States government, that's business because the world is moving. If you, like when we were at different conferences, you would find mayors of thousands of cities around the world that are involved in serious climate actions. I don't see anybody going to stop them. These people will continue to move. For me, the trend is moving very fast from the station.
All right, let's hear you, Dr. Anthony.
Thank you very much. Let me borrow from the opposite of Say's law, which Kai said, demand creates its own supply. Unlike Say's law, classic that says supply creates its own demand. What the world is demanding for now is what we should produce so that the revenue can come back in the process of the transaction. Now, the world is going green. The world is going toward energy-saving policies, environmental saving policies. I'm not saying we should back out from it, but we should be rational in our decisions. What this man asks is what I said in my first presentation. Capital intensity, factor intensity in your growth strategy. We should be wise in combining the two. That is my own opinion. Use what you have to get what you want, with the intention that where we are moving to in the long run is green environments. We don't have the capacity, the resources now to move fully 100%. Just like the Western world did, they use this fossil fuel and this so-called bad, I don't want to use that language, bad productive strategies that is not environmental friendly to get to where they are today. No. We can still use it in the short run with good regulatory framework, as I said earlier. I'm still repeating it. In the short run. But we have in mind that where we are going to is where the world is going to, so that will not be lag at the end of the day. Thank you.
While we are on the subject of this, a mention was made about rebasing the economy. I think it was
you who made that.
Yes, and it interests me here to find out what the area of focus in this rebasing of the Nigerian economy would be.
Thank you. When you talk of rebasing of the economy, there are two major macroeconomic indicators: the gross domestic product and inflation rate. Rebasing of the GDP is all about bringing on board new economic activities that were not captured in the last base period. Now, the GDP of Nigeria today has 2010 as the base year, the commencement year, and it was launched in 2014. But mind you, there are a lot of new economic activities that have come on board since after 2010, like this blue economy, marine economy, pension fund, social insurance trust fund, a lot of also more informal economic activities today. A lot of SMEs, informal economic activities that were not captured in the last rebasing that made our economy the highest in Africa. But now the rebasing we have started now, that will be launched next week by God's grace, all things being equal, we are going to see a new economic structure of in Nigeria. A structure where crop production is the major contributor to the GDP now, followed by trade, followed by real estate. Before, number 3 contributor was crude oil production, but now it's real estate. So that's what I want to tell you about GDP rebasing. It will tell us the new current economic structure and the productive capacity of each of the sector in Nigeria. For the second one, which you call CPI, Consumer Price Index. Consumer Price Index is an index that we use to compute what we call inflation rates. It's an index that is relative in nature. Relative in the sense that we compare prices in the current period with a base period. Presently, our base year in Nigeria is 2009. We are comparing prices in 2025 to 2009. You can see it's far from each other. Now, the current CPI rebasing we are doing, our base year, which we call price reference period, with 2024. We are comparing prices in 2025 to 2024 so that we can have the current inflationary pressure in the economy. So that will tell us when price changes, we will see the real inflation in the economy. After the GDP rebasing, we will know the sectors that has high potential, where private sector or investors can optimize their investment strategy. So that is just what I will say about these two rebasing.
Well, let me get back to that. Normally, I remember in 2014.
And ideally, sorry, Prof, rebasing ought to be done every five years.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But because of financial constraint and the capital intensity involved, we have not been able to do. But thank God, we are doing these two big rebasing at the same time.
Yeah. So in 2014, when we were talking, I remember how much I pushed the then Minister of Finance for us to debate, because Ghana just did.
Yeah.
And Ghana posted 60% increase in their 2014. So I kept on shouting. But anyway, but you must know that it doesn't always have to be higher. Sometimes it could be much lower.
Yeah.
But in our own case, there were industries that were not captured very well, like the ICT that way and all that. So it came through. And also in this particular one we're doing, it's much more likely that it will be higher.
Okay.
Because many more things have erupted in the fullness of time. And then also you have the pervasive nature of the money, mobile money. And then you know what was it? 5 years ago?
Yeah.
Now, who goes to bank? Who goes to do what? The ATMs are not even working. But it's everybody around your phone, you have them on umbrella and they're spending money. And even the government revenue. You could see that each time you take 1 naira, 10 naira, somebody takes money from there. And Nigeria is number 3 in the world in the number of transactions, electronic transactions. You know, so there are significant changes that you are going to see in these figures. In case of the CPI, you see, I do know that there will be more baskets. And then sampling techniques will also have to increase because of the things that will change. But there are things that we may not even be able to capture very well, because I always say this in media. Nigeria's currency, 10 years ago, we buy with 1 naira, you buy 3 francs CFA. But today, with 1 naira, we can only buy 0.7 francs CFA, which means Nigerian currency has devalued about 80%. So whenever we talk about food baskets, I say, oh, wait a minute. We are surrounded by 100 million Francophone citizens using CFA. And for them, Nigerian food is 80% cheaper. So they continue to buy your food, and they are protected by ECOWAS Treaty on free movement of food. So monetary policy in Nigeria cannot reach them because their currency is not in our orbit. They are linked to euro, and France bonds 80% of their reserves to maintain that artificial value, very, very high. But it is a price that we are paying, but the difference is that we have what we call cross-border demand pool inflation, caused by the fact that the currency dropped. Whereas in the country, you're only looking at cost-push inflation because of all this price, this petrol, that. You're also looking at foreign imported inflation because of import. And you're looking at demand inflation, which is the 33 trillion that you created, ways and means. So you've got 3 inflation parameters in Nigeria, but there's the other one that is cross-border. You won't be able to pick that. And even if you do, you can't do anything with monetary policy with it. Well, but anyway, that's just...
Right. Well, I suppose at the end of the day, all this boils down to is how the Nigerian economy would work for its citizens. And that is, in simple terms, how Nigerians can live in a nation where they have access to food, affordable food, and to all the basics of standard living. And that is what this is all about. And so in the next few minutes that we have left on this program, I want us to address how the topic of our discussion today, the sovereign green bonds and the Nigerian economy, would address these issues where inflation, which is one of the biggest things we've Prof just talked about that, and in all the terms is used. I suppose the basic thing is, when will I be able to afford the basics of life? Okay. And how this bond would address that. In the closing comments as we round off.
Right. Like Mr. Anthony said, he said one of the major drivers of inflation is food. Why is our food security cover reducing? Encroachment of the desert. Farming happens in the north. So first of all, arrest the encroachment of the desert. It's like a rat race. So the encroachment of the desert made people lose their livelihoods. The few people that are still farming are being terrorized by bandits, which was caused by loss of livelihood of some. So arrest that. Once the land can be tilled, people will have a bigger, wider basket of food farming. And that will provide the food we need, which addresses the first basic need of man. And I think that will go a long way in creating a leverage for us to move to the next level. So for me, it's fixing the farmland by stopping the desert from coming in.
Well, I think there are many areas that we can apply green bonds to. But I think in the interest of what you said, we should just focus critically on poverty reduction and food security. Because that is where the market forces wouldn't really want to come in. The money wouldn't really want to go there. But that's where you save the country and save the economy. In the other areas like gas transition, all that, private sector can naturally go in there and get things done. But when you get that resource into food security and nutrition, you deal with our state of emergency in food security.
Right. Honorable Samuel.
Yeah, well, we will not be repeating the same thing. I think it's clear that the purpose of the green bond is to use it to help us deal with the issue of growing in a sustainable way as a nation. Because if you use the green bond to preserve, whether you're doing afforestation, whether you're doing nature-based solution approach towards fighting climate change, or whether you use it in the universities or tertiary institutions to ensure that you use renewable energy funded through green bond for these children to access education and continue to be a major resource. Because in just the summit that we had in Abuja, I returned just 2 days ago, when they were talking about not having education in Africa and all that, I intervened and took the microphone and told members, the panelists, that look, you don't talk about that in Nigeria, because in Nigeria we have a youthful and educated population that is incredibly, creative and productive. And you have seen what they've been able to develop, apps that were developed have been bought by major, telecommunication companies. So if we give education using resources that we get from Green Bond for our people to access education, either in a reduced way, or they have electricity, they have things, we are indirectly contributing to the growth of the nation. In summary, the Green Bond is supposed to assist us to enhance whatever we are doing towards climate resilience and sustainable development, in line with the provisions of the Climate Change Act.
Right. Dr.
Thank
Anthony,
you.
your closing comments?
There is nothing wrong in borrowing money as long as it is meant for developmental projects. That's what we call productive debt. As long as you can borrow the money, inject it into area that you can get the money back to pay the debt, that is good for Nigeria. Then, rebasing of the CPI will benefit household, benefit firm, will help government to take policies that will address the inflationary pressure in Nigeria. The GDP as well will tell us the investment strategy, the investment channel in all the sectors in Nigeria. It will let you know, this agricultural sector, it contributes about 70%. It can generate more employment for people. I can invest my limited resources in the agricultural sector. Real estate, it's about the third contributor to GDP in Nigeria. More information about the structure of the economy that will attract foreign direct investment. We help government on areas where tax can also be increased to generate revenue. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Well, gentlemen, we must leave the conversation here, and thank you all so very much for coming on and discussing today. We appreciate you being here.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Olaiton Fajuiton, essay to the Minister of Environment, Program Coordinator, Sovereign Green Bonds. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Professor Kenife, regular with us here on these conversations.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here once again. Honorable Sam Onuigbo, it's a pleasure hosting you.
Thank you very much indeed.
And Dr. Ayo Anthony of the NBS National Bureau of Statistics. We hope you come again. We'd like to keep an eye on that data and the figures, what it says. Thank
Definitely,
you.
I will be around if you invite me.
Right, okay.
Thank you.
And for all those who called in, thank you for being part of tonight's program. We appreciate you. Thank you. Next week, we'll be back with NTA Tuesday Live. I'm Cyril Stover. Bye for now.